They called him the Devil of the Atlantic, a man whose very name could freeze the hearts of seasoned sailors, Blackbeard. But behind the burning fuses in his beard and the cannon smoke that cloaked his ship lies a story the world tried to forget. A tale of rebellion, empire, and erasure. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed waters of history, where myth meets the man who defied an empire. Edward Teach, or Thatch, depending on the source, first appears in historical record around 1716, born around 1680 in Bristol, England. His early life is a mystery historians still debate. Some say he served as a privateer during Queen Anne's War, fighting under the English flag before turning rogue when peace came and pay disappeared. Others suggest he was always an outlaw, born of the sea and bound to it. Whatever the truth, by his mid-30s, he would become the most feared pirate of the Golden Age. In the Caribbean, where sugar and slaves made empires rich, hundreds of privateers found themselves suddenly unemployed after the war. Britain no longer needed their ships, but they had cannons, crews, and rage. Edward Teach joined the infamous Benjamin Hornigold, a pirate captain who operated off Nassau, the so-called Pirate Republic. There, Teach learned the code of piracy, democracy on deck, defiance against kings, and freedom bought with stolen gold. When Hornigold retired, Teach took command and forged his legend. It was during this time that the name Blackbeard was born. He grew his beard long, twisting it into braids and lighting slow-burning fuses beneath his hat during battle. Witnesses described a towering man with wild eyes and smoke curling around his face, half ghost, half god. Yet those who met him outside of combat called him polite, educated, even gentlemanly. This paradox, a monster in battle, a man of reason and peace, would make him immortal in both fear and folklore. In 1717, fate handed Teach his crown, a captured French slave ship called La Concorde. He refitted her with 40 guns, renamed her Queen Anne's Revenge, and ruled the Caribbean. From the Bahamas to the Carolinas, Blackbeard's black flag, a skeleton stabbing a heart with a spear, sent panic through colonial ports. Yet, unlike the stories later told, he rarely killed without reason. Many captains surrendered without a fight, and Blackbeard often let them go if they complied. Terror, he knew, was more effective than violence. Contemporary accounts, like those of Captain Charles Johnson's A General History of the Pirates 24, painted him as a demon of the seas. But historians now suspect Johnson's book, while foundational, mixed truth with exaggeration. It was propaganda, crafted to justify Britain's brutal suppression of piracy. The demon image served the crown well, masking the uncomfortable fact that Blackbeard and his men had once been loyal sailors, now betrayed by politics and greed. At the height of his power, Blackbeard commanded 4 ships and over 300 men. He blockaded Charleston, South Carolina, in May 1817, a daring act of defiance against one of Britain's richest colonies. For nearly a week, he held the harbor hostage, demanding medicine instead of gold. When his demands were met, he released his captives unharmed. To the British, he was a criminal. To his men, he was a strategist, a pirate who fought not for chaos, but for control. To understand Blackbeard, we must understand Nassau, a haven for outcasts, deserters, and free spirits. The so-called Pirate Republic was an accidental democracy, where captains were elected, loot was shared, and color or class mattered little. For a brief moment, the Caribbean was a world turned upside down. Slaves escaped and found freedom aboard pirate ships, while common sailors tasted equality denied by kings. Blackbeard thrived in this world, both warrior and philosopher of freedom. But paradise was short-lived. Britain, fearing loss of control over trade, launched a campaign to destroy the pirate republics. They offered royal pardons, false promises meant to lure out the most dangerous men. Some accepted. Blackbeard seemed to consider it. In 1718, he sailed to North Carolina, met with Governor Charles Eden, and accepted a pardon, on paper at least. Some claim he bribed Eden, securing legal protection while secretly continuing his raids. Blackbeard settled near Bath, North Carolina, for a brief and eerie peace. He attended social gatherings, dined with officials, and kept a fleet anchored offshore. Yet rumors swirled that he still plundered at night under false names. Locals whispered of buried treasure in the inlets and ghostly lanterns moving through the fog. Whether truth or legend, one thing was certain: the Empire could not tolerate a pirate who had outsmarted its laws.
But before we proceed further, we would love to know where you're tuning in from tonight. Whether it's the United States, Europe, Asia, or somewhere else across this vast and fascinating world. Drop your country, city, and local time in the comments below so we can see just how far our community reaches. And if you enjoy these journeys through time and untold stories, remember to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to join our growing storytelling family. By late 1718, Virginia's governor, Alexander Spotswood, had grown tired of Blackbeard's defiance. Without authority, he sent Lieutenant Robert Maynard and 2 war sloops south to hunt the pirate. It was a risky mission. Maynard's ships were smaller, his men fewer, but he had one advantage: the element of surprise. On November 21st, Maynard sighted Blackbeard's anchored vessel near Ocracoke Inlet, North Carolina. At dawn, the water was still. Then, cannon fire shattered the silence. The Adventure, Blackbeard's ship, unleashed a thunderous volley, shredding Maynard's men. Smoke blanketed the sea. When the dust cleared, Maynard appeared dead, but he had hidden his men below deck. As Blackbeard boarded for the final assault, Maynard's sailors erupted from below and ambushed him. What followed was one of the bloodiest duels in pirate history. Eyewitnesses said Blackbeard fought like a beast possessed. He took 5 musket balls and 20 sword cuts before collapsing, still swinging his blade. When he finally fell, Maynard decapitated him and hung his head from the bow of his ship as proof. The British proclaimed victory. The newspapers printed tales of a monster slain. Yet, in their haste to celebrate, they erased the man and the message behind the myth.
After Blackbeard's death, Britain began rewriting pirate history. The tales grew darker, more grotesque. Reports of devil worship and human sacrifice appeared in print,
though no eyewitness ever recorded such things during his life. The crown needed a monster, not a martyr. A man fighting the Empire's greed could never be portrayed as heroic. So, the legend of Blackbeard the Demon took root, smothering the story of Edward Teach, the betrayed sailor. Historians today sift through court records, letters, and ship logs that tell a more nuanced story. Blackbeard's correspondence reveals literacy and discipline, not madness. He rarely used violence beyond necessity and preferred psychological warfare, fear as deterrence. His crew followed strict codes of fairness and democracy. In truth, he was not the chaos the British described, but the order they feared. A man who proved that even the sea could be ruled without kings. Yet, centuries later, his true motives remain shrouded. Some say he sought redemption, others revenge. His treasure was never found, fueling endless searches along the Carolina coast. But perhaps his real treasure wasn't gold. It was freedom. The freedom to live without tyranny, to defy empire, to claim the sea itself as his kingdom. Today, divers still explore the wreck of the Queen Anne's Revenge, discovered off Beaufort Inlet in 1996. Cannons, anchors, and everyday artifacts, pipes, utensils, a sword hilt, paint a picture of life aboard the infamous ship. They tell a quieter story, one of humanity amid myth. Blackbeard's men were not demons, but sailors, craftsmen, and dreamers who followed a man who refused to kneel. As historians reconstruct his life, the question deepens. Why did we need him to be a monster? Perhaps because monsters justify control. Perhaps because the Empire could not admit that its own sailors turned pirate, not out of greed, but betrayal. Every tale of Blackbeard's evil hides a deeper truth. He was a reflection of the age, a mirror showing the violence and corruption of empire itself. So tonight, as the waves whisper beyond your window, remember this: legends are not lies, they are memories wearing masks. Beneath the beard, beneath the smoke and fury, was a man who challenged the tide of history and paid the price for his defiance. His body was gone, but his myth endured, too powerful to sink. In the next story, we'll uncover how other pirates, inspired by his legacy, carried the torch of rebellion long after his death. Until then, keep your lantern lit, your compass true, and never forget, history's darkest waters still hide its brightest souls.